Are you a creative freelancer or an agency shopping around for new clients? Well, your clients are shopping around for you, and when they come to you with a new project opportunity, they're trying to determine whether you're the right fit for their project. Have you ever thought about trying to determine whether they're the right fit for your agency? You should be. We're going to talk about that today. Hi, I'm Michael Janda, author of the book Burn Your Portfolio and the newly released book, The Psychology of Graphic Design Pricing. Now, this video is part 2 of my video, How to Analyze a New Project Opportunity. If you haven't watched part 1, I highly recommend you watch that before we dig into this one. It's not completely necessary, but it'll help you understand some of the things we're going to be talking about in this video. Now, part 1 of the video talked about the front side of my PDF that's available on my website, michaeljanda.com, where you can analyze a new project opportunity. In this video, we're going to talk about the flip side of that document, the new project interview, where you can go down this list and ask your client certain questions to determine whether they're the right fit for your agency. Not every project and not every client is a yes. If I could go back in time, knowing what I know now, I would have said no to a few key projects that really were disastrous. They cost me a lot of money. They became big challenges, emotional challenges. And if I could have known in advance that these were going to be bad opportunities, I wouldn't have taken them on. Now, my goal with this video is to help you ask the right questions and do the right research so that you can analyze a client opportunity and determine whether it's a good fit for your agency. In video number 1, we talked about what makes the perfect new project opportunity. And it was really a trifecta of 3 different things: that you're looking for the right client, the right project, and the right price. All those things come into harmony, and you know you've got a really good chance of having a successful project. In that video, we analyzed 20 different things. There were 9 for the right client, and 7 for the right project, and 4 to determine whether it's the right price. Now, I'd highly recommend, again, that you watch that video as it corresponds with this video. In this video, we're going to focus on how do you get that information from the client. I intentionally did part 1 as the video about the analysis, because in order to understand what you should be asking the client in a new project interview, you need to understand what information you're trying to gather. What information are you going to analyze? And so I wanted to do the analysis first and then do the interview afterwards so that you can understand how do you get the right information from the client. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking about the other side of that downloadable PDF that contains the new project interview. The new project interview has a series of different questions relating to the client, project, and price. And these are things that you should be asking your client in your discovery meeting in your effort to determine whether they're the right fit for your agency or not. After you do these interview questions, you can analyze the responses by using the analysis, which we discussed in part 1. So let's dig in to the best practices in doing this research and interviewing of a client in a new project opportunity to determine whether they're a good fit for your agency. There are a couple of best practices that you need to be aware of when you're going into a new project opportunity, when you're going into this new discovery meeting with a client. The client's coming into your office, or you're meeting them somewhere in their office to go over the details of their project. You want to make sure that you come across professional. Now, there are a few best practices. Number 1 is that you want to do research before the meeting. Make sure you go to their website, learn everything you can about this client before you go into the meeting. Have an idea of who the CEO is and some of the awards that they've won and who some of their clients are and when they were founded and what their products are and what kind of things they're trying to serve to their end customer. Those are the kinds of things you want to do research on. You can go to their Facebook page, YouTube, Instagram, wherever they market their business, and especially their website, where you can determine some of these initial things. You always want to go into a client meeting with some research under your belt so that you can ask some intelligent questions and be on the same page with the client. So number one is do research before the meeting. Number two is that you don't want to ask any questions that have already been answered in the research. I'm not saying don't talk about some of the things that you've researched, but don't ask them when they were founded if you already know that they were founded in 2004 or whatever the date might be. You can ask questions that relate to your research, but don't ask questions about things that you already know the answer to. Number three, be interested and take notes. This is a massive pet peeve of mine. You're going into a client meeting, and if you don't have something to write on or your laptop there to take notes, you look disinterested. Now, I say be interested and not act interested. You're not acting. You've got to try and figure out a way to actually be interested in this client's business. So in that meeting, be interested and take notes. When they say something, jot down a couple of words that relate to it to spark your memory so that when you're doing your proposal, you can have a good foundation of information that you can draw from. And then finally, after the meeting, you want to analyze the opportunity. You don't analyze the opportunity during the meeting. You don't want to show the client this side of the sheet that has the red boxes and the yellow boxes and the green boxes. And then you're sitting there in the meeting saying, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. And you put a big X on the red box and they're looking across the table thinking, why did he just mark an X on that? Or a green or a yellow. You don't want to show them this analysis. So this is on the flip side. I recommend that you put the interview portion on one side of a clipboard and then have the analysis portion on the back side. It's a 2-page PDF so that you can print it on double-sided and then use the same one sheet to do this interview and the analysis. You'll also see here there's some spot for taking notes. You can do that in this sheet, or you can do it just in your binder or wherever you keep notes on your client meetings. Okay, so those are the 4 rules that relate to a new project opportunity interview. Now let's dig in to how this meeting goes and some of the questions that you want to be asking. And when you're going into a meeting, you always want to set the stage about what this meeting is about. Define the expectations so everybody knows what we're going to be talking about, how long the meeting's going to be. You want to kind of set that stage. So I would start with something like, hey, thank you for coming to the meeting. We're super excited to get to know you. We've done some research about your company. Now, in this meeting, we were thinking we could start by talking a little bit about your business to help us understand your company a little better, and then we'll go into digging into the details of the project. How does that sound to you? If you start with some opening remarks like that in the meeting, your client's going to understand what this meeting is all about, and you're going to be able to dig right into questions about their business before just launching into, so tell us about your project and getting all the scope details. Acting and being interested in their business will help them have confidence that you are really vested, that you're very interested in what they're doing and you're vested in the success of this new project before you even know the details of the project. Okay, so let's go down some of these business questions that relate to whether this is the right client or not. So the first item that I usually start with in a meeting like this is very general. I start with something like, hey, we did some research about your company online, but why don't you tell us a little bit about your business? This will help them kind of open the door. It may answer a lot of questions that you're going to ask later, and you do not have to ask those if they answer them in this kind of opening statement. The next thing you could ask is, how long have you been in business? When did your business start? Then you could go into, how's your business doing right now? How are things going? Have you had any challenges lately? And you could easily merge from there into, What are some of the biggest challenges that your company's facing right now? Where do you see your challenges? We're at the start of a new year here. What are some of the challenges and goals that you have? How does your company generate sales? Do you guys have a sales force? Or are you doing a lot of advertising? What is it that drives sales and revenue into your business? I'd ask something like, hey, what are your most successful products? What really drives the most revenue for your business? Now, as you can see, these first few questions will help us understand that first item in our analysis, the client's business health. We'll get an understanding of how healthy their company is, and that's going to help us do that piece of analysis. So you're not just going into the meeting saying, hey, how's your business health? You're not asking it like that. You're asking a lot of different questions that help you do that analysis of what the client's business health is. And then you can mark your answer with the red, yellow, or green response. And I'd go into talking about some of the elements that relate to the personal relationship analysis. I'd ask, how did you hear about our agency? Have you heard anything about our agency out in the marketplace? Do you know anybody who works at our agency? And then from there, it's easy to go and start talking about their experience with other agencies in the past. Have you worked with other agencies in the past? How did that go? Have you had experience providing feedback and managing projects with other creative professionals, either freelancers or other agencies? What was that experience like for you? And then from there, you can go into talking about their marketing budget and have an understanding of how much money they're spending on marketing and what the future opportunities are. That's one of the elements in our analysis is future opportunities. You want to try and determine that, but you don't just sit there and say, hey, do you have other projects coming up? It sounds needy, but you can ask things like, what other types of projects do you outsource? Do you have an internal marketing team or do you outsource a lot of your work? What are the different types of projects that you usually find yourself outsourcing? Is your marketing budget allocated monthly, quarterly, or annually? Now, when you ask this question, it's all about trying to determine whether there's future opportunity there. If a client has a monthly marketing budget, they're probably spending a lot more money on marketing than if they have an annual marketing budget. So a monthly budget, a quarterly budget, or an annual budget. This really gives you that sense of what the opportunity is for future work. Then you want to try and find out what their network is like, if they have the potential to drive new business to your company. So you can ask some questions like, hey, what industry organizations are you involved in? How active are you in those? Do you go to all the monthly meetings at the Chamber of Commerce or to a business networking groups or to different trade shows? What kinds of things do you do to get the word out there about your business in a face-to-face setting? Then you want to try and figure out if they're technically savvy. And I usually ask questions about what apps they use to run their business, if they have different pieces of software, and if it's proprietary software, or if that's an industry software like a construction management software or something that they may use. I would ask some questions about that. The more that they can speak with confidence relating to different pieces of software, the higher likelihood it is that they're technically savvy. You could also ask questions about specific pieces of software. Hey, have you ever used Google Docs? How familiar are you with Google's apps, Docs and Sheets and Slides? Do you use those things? Do you guys have a Dropbox account? How do you share files? Just ask some questions that relate to their technical prowess. You could also ask a question about your production management software. If you're using things like Teamwork or Basecamp or whatever it might be that you use to manage your production, you could ask some questions if they've ever had experience doing that. And if they say, no, we haven't, just say, oh, it's no big deal. We do a training at the start of each project to make sure that our client understands how we can use that software to best manage this project together. And then finally, I like to ask a client what they think the perception of their business is in the marketplace. I ask this question to get a sense of how they feel about their brand image. Do they feel like they're trying to catch up to the number one leader in their marketplace? Or do they feel like they're in that top tier? Where are they in the landscape of their industry, and how do people perceive them? This can often help you draw a lot of insights into their brand image and some of the things that you can help them work on. Now, as a reminder, while you're asking these questions, you want to be taking notes. Jot down a thing here and there. Act and be interested. Okay, now let's move on to questions that relate to the project to help you determine whether this is the right project for you. Now, it probably goes without saying that you want to ask enough questions to accurately determine the project scope. Now, we're not going to go into scoping projects in this video, but I do have plans for that coming up in the future. For now, we're just going to say, ask a lot of questions to extract the project scope, and keep asking questions until you can't think of anything left to ask. Getting the scope right is so critical to the success of a project. So ask a lot of questions that relate to the scope of the project. Now, the rest of the questions that I have here are the types of things that you can ask that relate to your analysis on whether this is a good fit for you. The first thing I would ask is, how would you define success of this project? What would make this project successful to you? This is an often overlooked question that can help you really get a sense of what the client's expectations are for this project. If they think that you're going to design a new logo and that success is going to look like them doubling their revenue next year, well, that may not quite be in harmony with the right expectations for that project. So you want to ask them and get a sense of what their expectations are for the success of this project. Then I'd ask some things that relate to how risky this project is. In our analysis, we call it the risk factor. So I would ask, and what's going to happen to your business if this doesn't yield the results that you're hoping for? We're super confident in our ability to execute on this work, but if this doesn't yield what you're looking for, what's going to happen to your business? This will help you understand if this project has high risk factor or lower risk factor. Then I'd ask questions about their past experience with similar projects to this one. I'd ask, hey, tell us about your past experience. Have you ever done a website like you're asking for this time? Or have you ever gone through a logo rebrand? Have you ever gone to press checks and things? Since we're doing a print brochure, how much understanding do you have of that type of process, the production process that relates to this project that you're asking for? You can then kind of migrate into asking about the competitive landscape. How many other agencies are you looking at for this project? Are you interviewing a lot of different agencies? Or is it just a couple? Or is it just us? What are you looking for? How much are you shopping this around? Now, it's interesting because I've had clients come in and say that they've interviewed 10 different agencies relating to this project. And then other ones who say, oh, we're just looking at you guys. It's all over the map. Now, the ones who are looking at 10 different agencies, you know that's a highly competitive environment. It's going to be tougher for you to land it, and it's likely going to be related to the price. If they're shopping that many agencies, a lot of times they're price shopping, trying to find the lowest price. But ask that question and know what the competitive landscape is for this opportunity. From there, you can kind of merge into talking about what this experience is going to be like working with them on their side. And the goal here is to determine who the decision maker is and who the other players are in this project. So I usually ask, hey, describe the people that are going to be involved on your side. Is there a coordinator? Are you going to be our main point of contact? Who's the decision maker? Are there designers on your team who we're going to be interacting with, or marketing people? What are we going to be doing in relation to the people involved in this project? Who are we going to be talking with and interfacing with? Now, again, the goal here is to determine who that decision maker is and to make sure that you have access to that person throughout the project. Then finally, I talk about the deadline. So what's your timeline like? When are you hoping to launch this project? What's your deadline? And it's always good to ask if it relates to any other marketing efforts. Is this tied to some other marketing campaign that's going to all launch at one time? This will help you know how firm that deadline is. Now, I always love a firm deadline, whether the client thinks it's firm or not. I love to know when this project is due, when we're going to have this complete, so that I can schedule my production long term. But sometimes a client with a wavy, waffly deadline is problematic. They don't know when it needs to be done, so it doesn't matter when it's done for them, and they just spin their wheels and have extra change orders because there's no hard, fast deadline. So get that conversation started early about the deadline of the project and try and determine how fixed this deadline is on the client's side of this project. And then finally, we're going to wrap up this conversation talking with the client about price. We're going to ask them some questions to determine whether this opportunity is the right price for our agency. Now, the first thing that's easy and obvious to ask is to just ask their budget. A lot of designers are afraid to do this. Don't be afraid to ask the budget. Just come right out and say it. So what's your budget for this project? Or is there a budget you're trying to work inside for this project? Ask them that question and then see how they respond. Now, some clients are going to just give it up right out of the gate, and others are going to make it hard for you to extract that number. In my book, The Psychology of Graphic Design Pricing, I share the script and several tactics on how to flush out the client's budget. I also have some of that information in Burn Your Portfolio. You can find it in both of those. I'm also planning a video here in the near future about how to flush out the client's budget, and we're going to talk about that in more detail. So for now, just ask the client, what's your budget? How much are you hoping to spend on this? That's the type of thing that you shouldn't be afraid to ask, so go for it. Then I have a couple of questions that relate to the market value. If this is fair market value, their budget, if what they're trying to spend is inside that fair market value. So the first thing I'd ask there is, hey, so what have you spent on things like this in the past? Or you could ask, what are some of the other bids coming in at? You've gotten some other prices so far. Where are those landing, and are you comfortable in that price range? Then I'd go in and ask some questions about payment terms and just let them know, hey, when we give you our proposal, it'll have our payment terms. Usually we have a certain percentage of the project that's due at the start, and then after that, we invoice our projects after each phase is completed, and we invoice due upon receipt. Is that okay with you? Are you comfortable with those kinds of payment terms? And just see how they respond. They're going to tell you, well, our accounting team says we have a net 30, or we have net 60, or we have net 90. I had a client who wanted to pay in 120 days, and they gave themselves a 5% discount if they paid within 5 days of receipt of invoice. Now, I always love to get the money in 5 days, but they just gave themselves a 5% discount. Now, this was a major media company, so we couldn't really fight against that. If you say no, they're not going to give you the work. So they're just giving themselves that little discount every single time. So get that conversation started about payment terms. Make sure that the client is comfortable with the payment terms that you usually do for your projects. And then finally, I would go in and ask some things about the source of their money. How are they funding this project? And if it's a big corporation or a publicly traded company or something like that, you don't need to ask this question. You know that they have revenue and budgets. But if it's a little mom and pop client, you want to make sure that their money is safe money. So you'd ask that question, how are you funding this project? And if they come back to you and say, oh, well, I just mortgaged my house to be able to pay for this, it's a massive red flag. You know that they're going to be high stress, that they're leveraging their own personal debt to be able to fund this project. They have big dreams about what this thing is going to do. That's a big red flag. So be careful with those types of clients. So just ask that question. So how are you going about funding this? Is this coming out of your budget? Do you have money already allocated for it? Where's this revenue coming from to be able to pay for this project? Okay, now those are the questions. They're all listed here on the new project interview sheet. You can find this on my website. You can download it and use it in your meetings. Share it with your friends. This, I hope, will be very helpful to you to ask some questions beyond just the scope of the project. You want to get more out of those discovery meetings than just the list of things that the client wants you to create. You want to get the information that you need to be able to analyze whether this is a good opportunity for you or not. Now, I want to wrap this up by saying that not every project is a yes. You do not have to take on every project that comes your way. Some projects you are better off saying no. If I could go back in time, I would have said no to a few projects, and it would have saved me stress, tears, pain, all the things, and especially money, if I would have said no to those projects. So don't be afraid to say no if the project is not the right fit. Ask the right questions, do your research, and then do the analysis and determine for yourself whether this project is the right client, project, and price, and then make your decision. Now, again, as I wrapped up in video number 1, you want to take that analysis, and it's going to help you with 2 different things. It's going to help you decide if you should take the project or not. And if you do take the project, it's going to help you go into it knowing what the red flags are so that you can counteract those during the course of the project. I hope this video helps you. If you like this type of content, hit the subscribe button. And if you have any questions or comments, please chime in the comments section. I'm happy to respond, and we can help figure out any of the specific challenges that you're finding in your business or as you start to implement this analysis process into your discovery meetings with your clients. Grateful to be with you. Thank you for watching this video. We'll see you in the next one.